Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to let everyone get logged in here. It's 11 a.m. and we'll get started in just a couple of seconds. We've got Jeff Rembaum as our esteemed guest today. Super happy to have you with us, Jeff. How are you today?
Very good. Super happy to be here. I wish it was a little
Yeah.
cooler outside. But this is a fun topic, Leslie. I'm really glad you put this together. I think the people that'll be tuning in and joining us um, are those that will really glean some great information coming out of today. So we also
Yeah,
have
we have a
lots of questions on personnel and when they could use that exception. And I know we're going to cover that in detail. Saw that show up a couple of times.
yeah, we have a very diverse attendance today. So that's awesome. So I think we'll be able to help a lot of people in a lot of different ways. Unfortunately, our other special guest, Nicole Johnson Pendergrass, did have a personal emergency today and she's unable to join us. So we wish her well with her situation, but we are going to move full steam ahead today and we'll just go ahead and get started. So this topic is employee management for boards. And again, my name is Leslie Alvarez. I am with Community ACE, Community Association Consulting Experts. I'm also a manager in the industry for some of you that know me personally. And we have with our special guests today, Jeff Rembaum. Jeff, you were going to say something?
I am. You are more than just a manager. I'm sorry. You are a PCAM, the highest designation a licensed manager can get that takes years to get through that program.
Thank you, Jeff. That's true. I do hold the CMCA, AMS, LSM, and PCAM designations with CAI. So I'm very proud of those.
More, you have more initials than I do. You have 12 and
I know it. I know it. It's every year I'm trying to find a new one. I'm actually getting involved in the club industry now to add the CCM designation.
nice.
So
Perpetual.
we'll get started.
Let's do it.
So here we are, volunteer board members as an employer. So volunteer board members come from all sorts of backgrounds, education and careers. You may be an attorney, an accountant, business consultant, a sales leader, or maybe even a homemaker. No matter what your prior experience is in your career or in life, you qualify as a volunteer board member just by owning your home. It's the only qualification that's really necessary. When such a vast group of volunteers come together, they can oftentimes suddenly become the employer of a team. And many of these volunteers may not have ever been trained in human resources or even managed a team before. All the varying personalities and directions from the different director that they want to head in, it's just a recipe for frustration. And if everyone isn't all with a clear understanding of what the expectations are to be set. So we want to talk today about how to manage that. We're going to learn about the 3 employees that there are in the association, both bona fide employees of associations, employees of a management company, and independent contractors. We're going to talk about how much does an employee actually cost you? How much does employee turnover matter? Salaries, bonuses, and overall benefit structures, how to manage performance, how to assist and support your manager with educational and personal development support, and how to create and maintain a positive work environment. So those are today's objectives. So to get started, let's talk about the types of employees. The basic definition of an employee is a person who works for another in exchange for financial or other compensation. But this gets really complicated, Jeff, in this industry. We've got 3 different types of employees. Directly employed by the association attorneys, directly employed by the association, indirectly employed through a management company, and then the independent contractor situation. And I know that there's been some debates about this sometimes. So let's talk about these each one by one, Jeff.
I think that's a great idea. And I loved your thought about directly employed by the attorney. I think that would be an interesting twist. But since you brought it up, If anybody knows any competent people, we are looking for some help in our Palm
That's
Beach Gardens office.
right.
So I'm going to throw that out there because you
You
opened the door
are
for that.
hiring. You are
I
hiring. You
am. We
are
need a legal
absolutely right.
assistant, secretary, whatever, whatever the term of
Perfect
art
for a
may
large,
be. But we need a,
perfect for a manager. Perfect for a
yeah,
manager that wants to make a little change in their career. Absolutely.
definitely.
So directly employed by the association, this person gets their paycheck and their W-2, or I'm sorry, yeah, this person has the paycheck and the W-2 that has the association's name on it. The taxes are withheld by the association, and they may even have an employment agreement with the association. The board of directors sets the schedule and directs what will be done, how it will be done, and manages their performance.
Leslie, I want to jump in real quick before you change slides on may have an employment contract because there's a good side and a bad side. Florida is an at-will employment state, so you can pretty much fire anybody for any non-discriminatory reason unless you enter into a contract with that person. And once you're into the contract, you have to abide by the contract termination provisions, which if we draft them, we make them quite broad in favor of the association. But I just wanted to point out that little wrinkle in there.
You know, Jeff, that's really important because when I come to it from the other side, I'm the manager and I have my own employment attorney that looks at my employment contract. I'm looking for a tighter contract. I'm also negotiating things like advanced severance. I'm negotiating
I'm
those
wiping
sorts of,
those out all the time. Yeah, the advanced
yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. So we definitely come from two different perspectives on this. But for the managers that are on the call, if you happen to manage or ever go self-manage, an employment contract is usually recommended as a manager from the management
I
perspective
think you
to
should
help
have it.
to help protect you and also to help to empower you.
So it
In,
manages
in
expectations, right? So it says what the association wants that person to do, and that person can see that enumerated, lengthy item, like 3 or 4 to sometimes 10 pages of responsibilities, and you can negotiate them together with the association if you're the manager, and really set yourself up for success by having clear expectation so that the association so often when they look at what the manager's role is, they misunderstand it. But by having it clearly spelled out in the contract, it really helps protect both parties.
Absolutely, especially with the way that some boards turn over around here in Florida. You know,
Right.
those boards that have annual elections and the whole board potentially turns over, your manager is left with complete conflicting directions each and every year. And this can empower them with spending limit authorities and empower them for what type of decision making they are allowed to do, just like a management company has their management contract. So it's definitely useful in helping to set them up for success. Employed by the management company. In this case, the employee or the management, the maintenance tech, their paycheck and the W-2 has the name of the management company on it. The taxes are withheld by the management company. There is a management contract between the association and the management firm, and the management firm manages work performance. So this one, again, the definition of what the manager's duties are included within the management contract, and the management company is the one that handles all payroll and handles all performance reviews, annual reviews, all of that. The last one is the independent contractor. These employees must receive a W-9. They would receive their check and the W-9 from the association. No taxes are withheld. They are generally considered self-employed. There may be a contract between the association and the individual. It just depends. And generally speaking, to be a bona fide independent contractor, you must set your own schedule, and the association only has the right to control or direct the expected result of the work, not what and how it will be done. So that's a little different there. And I know I've seen, Jeff, several self-managed associations over the years hire a manager as an independent contractor because they don't want to pay the taxes, but they want to set the office hours and tell them everything to do just like a regular employee. And that's not really a bona fide employee if they're paying self-employment tax on it as a 1099.
Well, actually, they probably, if they got some type of employment audit, would fail that audit because that person is really an employee, not an independent contractor. Once you cross
Right.
that line, yeah.
Right.
Good point.
So why is this important? This is really important because of, like we just said, the employer legal obligations and the tax implications, both for the employee and for the management, the association. It also is really important as it pertains to Florida statutes for closed versus open meetings, because we know we can call closed meetings for employees. And Jeff, this is something I wanted to ask you about. So I've had several opinions from a couple of different firms that if the employee is the employee of a management company, then it does not qualify for a personnel closed door meeting. What's your take on that?
Well, if a lawyer opines on that, maybe they need to go back and take a look at Chapter 720, exceptions, personnel records of the association. Now, these are the exceptions dealing with the types of records that are available to the owners. And we know that personnel records of the association or management company employees, including but not limited to disciplinary, payroll, health, insurance records, are privilege records, personnel records. All right. So all of a sudden we're saying employees of a management company have a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? A little more protection, right? From official record requests. I believe that if we're talking about not a vendor, all right, a vendor is a different category. We're not talking about an employee of the roofer who was contracted to do the roof, and we're upset about the representative of the contractor, and we want to have a private meeting to discuss them. No, that wouldn't be right. But if we're talking about a manager who is, for all intents and purposes, not an employee of the association, but I'll come up with a phrase, a pass-through employee of the association, unless a court tells me otherwise, I'm going to probably rule in favor of my client, right? Let them understand the risk, but that they could meet to discuss the manager. You can't meet in private to get around the open meeting notice requirements to discuss the management company. That would be going too far. It's going too far to discuss, again, the representative from the roofing company or whatever construction project. That too, that's not kosher. But I think if we're going to discuss the manager, a person who is at the association working there 40 hours a week, where the management company is the pass-through entity for payment. Because remember, the management company is paying the employee, and yet the association is not only paying that salary, but probably the big percentage, if you will, on top of that, that goes directly to the management company for all the other issues that go along with having an employee. Plus, they want to make profit.
The burden.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So they're entitled to all of that. But I think at the end of the day, with certain caveat, that privilege should be extended. It would be great to get some legal clarity so that people won't have to ask this question. And I think it depends on the comfort level of the board itself once you explain all this to the board. But until a judge looks at this and comes out in an appellate ruling that says this is the law and this cannot be used in this fashion, I don't see that it can't be. But I'd feel better too also if we added some additional contract language regarding that they are, even though they are a employee of the management company, in the written contract, you could also include that we consider them personnel of the association. Now, some lawyers would say, wait, that means that every time something goes wrong, the association is going to get sued. Something goes wrong with that employee. Well, you know what? Even if they work for the management company, the lawyers always look at the association as the deep pocket. So you're going to be in the line of fire anyway. So I think there's conversations that can be had and ways to work with this, but you have to be judicious in how you do it.
Yeah, it's probably got a lot to do with how the management contract is written, like you just said, in the determination when whoever your legal counsel is reviewing it and making that recommendation for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it also makes a difference for, like you said, for records requests. So
Sure.
Because obviously bona fide employees, their personnel files would not be eligible for records requests. What about 1099 contractors? Their files, their vendor files are usually open, right? If somebody wanted to view that might be what one of the key differentiators is why you wouldn't want your manager to be a 1099.
Well, and this is why we have to look at the specific words of a statute. Personnel records of the association or management company employees. So independent contractors, sorry, your records are wide open.
Okay, that's good.
Mhm.
So let's move on and let's talk about the costs of an employee. So the basic cost of an employee includes their salary, hourly compensation, their federal taxes, the Social Security, Medicare, unemployment, workers' comp, health benefits, and paid time off holidays. But how do you get to the manager salary number? How do you know what is fair for a particular manager's salary expectations? The manager's salary consists of multiple different factors. First, overall experience. If it's a new manager that's just recently licensed and really starting out, obviously they're not going to come in at the highest pay scale. Perhaps they, though, have years of other business experience that is transferable, maybe from the apartment management or commercial management industry. And so that still gives them a strong overall experience backing. Then their years of experience in this specific industry. Again, that's the second factor they are looking at that. The other thing that also comes is your CAI designations. All those initials, like we said at the beginning, Jeff, after my name and such, that usually adds more value because that employee has traditionally, or that manager has proven that they are invested in their career and they've spent money on their education for that. And then any other specialties. You might find a manager from time to time that's got a CPA, or I've even seen over the years a few retired attorneys that have become managers. Those types of other degrees and specialties could also have a factor in what their starting salary would look like. So just because your budget is a budget, that does not mean that that's the right salary for that particular employee. And that's something to really keep in mind, that you really have to look not just at your budget, but what you're looking for in a manager and make sure that that salary is comparable for that experience level that you're seeking.
So with that in mind, 2 9-hour days and a test a 10th grader could pass, and poof, you are a community association manager. And theoretically, the next day, you could be in a role as a manager where your association has a $6 million budget, because that's where you got assigned, and talking about being a fish out of water. So to your point, the overall experience of the individual is so very important. When you all are out there and you are interviewing management companies, and you're going to have the opportunity to then also interview the potential managers assigned to your community, you really want to look deep at their prior experience. What other designations do they have in a life experience to help them in the role? For example, my association, we could have somebody that just graduated, right? We're a 127 home community. We have our biggest budget expense is the cable. Other than that, we have a gate and a road and architectural requirements, right? So not much to it. But when you go into some of these condominiums where the budgets can be $6 and $7 and $10 million a year, well, that's a whole nother level of manager that you need that the statute really doesn't take into account. So you've got to be on the ball when you are interviewing for specific managers.
That's very true. And I had an experience a couple of weeks ago. I met with someone who was looking for me to help them find a new manager. And they said they just want a part-time retired CAM. And I said, first of all, anybody that's been in this business for any length of time that knows how to do this job, when we retire, we're not trying to do a part-time retired CAM job. We know that really means full-time for part-time pay. We're not trying to do that. But it's true. People, I find since I moved here to South Florida, a lot of people, you take the test, you take a class, you take a test, you clear a background check, and all that means is that you are legally allowed to do the job. It does not mean that you have the skills and capability to do the job. But a lot of people have gotten into the industry over the years that really, they go in and they think that it's just a whole new third career for them in their retirement stage. And it may be, and they may be really good at it, but it also may not be their strength because they just haven't, really done the homework and done all the years of experience in this industry. So Taxes and insurance, again, federal taxes, Social Security, Medicare, you have your contribution, they have theirs. So you're withholding taxes, you're also then contributing towards. If you're in a state, that has state taxes, any state taxes, unemployment insurance and such, workers' comp insurance is all on you. If you have, let me stop for a second and say, if you don't have direct employees and your employees are through the management company, you should still be working with your insurance agent in getting a workers' comp insurance rider. It's a small, no employee. It's usually about $550 or so a year to be able to provide just in the event of any lapse in coverage for any of your service providers and team. And then also health insurance benefits, the contribution towards assisting with health insurance benefits. That's a big thing. A lot of self-managed associations don't offer that. And that, I think, is part of what can be to their detriment of trying to find qualified managers, because managers are looking for those benefits. And so that's something to keep in mind, whether they offer it or whether they are willing to add that to the compensation package. It's definitely helps to make these associations more competitive with the larger associations that do offer it, or with the larger management firms. Okay. Time off budgeting costs. So when you're budgeting for an association budget, you have your employees has their time off, 2 weeks vacation. If you have a front desk and you have 5 employees that each get 2 weeks of paid vacation or sick time, that's a total of 10 weeks extra that you should be allowing for, because you also need to budget for the time that the employee is off to pay them, and also for their replacement. The same could be true in the event of a manager. If you have a 1-person small office and your manager gets 2 weeks, 3 weeks paid time off, while they get their time off, you also may have to bring a temp in to be able to keep the office, staffed for emergencies and foot traffic. That extra time is something that you should include in your budget, because it is going to be a cost that's going to be to you. Costs of employee turnover. So this is something that I had happen to me in a job interview, Jeff. It was the funniest thing. I went on a job interview and I was sitting in front of the firing squad, the 15 board members all lined up, and I'm at the front, at the other side of the table. They're all on one side of the table, I'm on the other, and they asked me, "We've had 6 managers in 10 years. And we can't figure out what's wrong." They said, "Why is it that we can't keep a manager?" And in my never-ending quest to be candid and forthright, I said, well, my tenure is going to be a direct reflection on how you treat me. If you treat me poorly that first year, you will see that it will take me a few months to get out, but I will be gone before my 2nd anniversary. And so they hired me. I got the offer within an hour after that board meeting. It was a unanimous vote. You name it, they just loved it. And swear to God, Jeff, I resigned 1 month before my 2nd anniversary.
How about
And
that?
three board members came up to me on my last week, brought me my honorary, farewell bottle of wine, and said, "We remember what you said. Like, we know why you're gone."
Who was it that was treating you poorly, the community or the board?
A little bit of both. A little bit of both. I had one resident during mass COVID protocols screaming in the lobby at me that she will see me fired if it better than, if it's the last thing she does. And one of my board members told her, you have a better chance of seeing God.
Yeah.
You
People can
know,
be so nasty, and it just seems to be getting worse.
yeah, and these board, the multiple politics and playing games but behind each other's backs and all of those things were just really, really frustrating. So I made a change. So the problem with that is losing employees It costs the association in multiple different ways. First and foremost, you've got the actual cost, recruiting, advertising. If you're hiring a recruiter, that can cost you tens of thousands of dollars for a professional recruiter sometimes. The ramp up time and retraining. If you get a good manager, they can hit the ground running pretty well, but it still takes them time just to learn the little nuances of your community, the rules, the regulations. There's that ramp up time, at minimum 90 days. Really a good 60 days is what really, I mean, a
more.
good 6
I'm going to
months.
add and more to that.
You got to go all the way through a whole full year before
Yeah.
you really know everything about the association. But to really just, feel like you're hitting your stride, a solid 90 days to 6 months.
Right.
You have delayed projects that then can cause your costs for the projects to increase because, costs are rising and construction materials are rising or labor is rising and all of that. So that costs you money. And then you lose the institutional knowledge. And that's just priceless. There's just no way that you can say that, it's somebody that remembers what happened 10 years ago and knows exactly where to go find the file in the boxes in the back closet underneath stairwell B, in building A. You just can't knock that. It's amazing. And so it really does cost you a lot in terms of both money and productivity. What I find in coming to South Florida a lot, or actually any building, you find properties that have some of those long-term employees. Like we said, employee turnover is bad, but the alternative to it is the he's like family employee. This is the cautionary tale of a long-term employee. So you've got two things to weigh sometimes. You've got the cost of the turnover and you losing of the institutional knowledge and having to rev somebody up again versus the person who uses bubble gum and bobby pins to repair your generator. Or you go into and you have a plumber go in and you look at a line and you see a plumbing line with, duct tape wrapped around it to keep the line from leaking. Those sorts of things can cost you also. So part of the thing of knowing about employee management is truly knowing where someone is valuable and where someone is maybe covering up and not as valuable as they make themselves appear to be. They do tend to make themselves appear to be very invaluable. They tend to have a tendency of an incidence of increased side jobs while they're on the clock.
I want to talk about that.
Yeah,
Before you
often do. Okay. They often do favors for cash. And they often do unpermitted work like electrical or plumbing that is often not decoded as a safety issue.
So let's talk about that employee who wears the association shirt during the day. He takes it off at night and he does side work in the association with this key difference. The board is knowledgeable about it. The board is not knowledgeable about it. The board has, remember, if one board member knows or has reason to know, then knowledge to all board members is basically imputed, meaning the association has liability. So if you were to look at the Florida pleadings, if you will, at the courthouse, you would find one particular lawsuit filed by a family who alleges an association had knowledge that their employee was working off duty for members, getting paid separately, nothing to do with the association, but yet because batteries were allegedly turned the wrong way, smoke detector didn't work, there was smoke, one thing leads to another, and there's injury. And now the association is potentially on the hook, depending upon their level of knowledge. So it really should be, if you don't want the liability for your employee doing off-duty work in the association, it needs to be prohibited.
Yes, it's, I've seen it sometimes where they even do it while they're on the clock.
Now it's even worse.
And they're taking money. And
Right.
then you wonder why they don't have time to do preventative maintenance.
That's theft. At the end of the day, that's theft because you're supposed to be working for party A and you're getting paid by party A, but at the same time, you are working for party B. So what else should be then in that management contract or that vendor, not vendor contract, but maybe you have an employee contract for the handyman, if you will, needs to be spelled out that they're not permitted to do side work, especially
Yes.
during working hours, but at any other time as well.
Yeah. No,
Let them do
it can
that
be
somewhere
it can be
else.
a really rough thing, but 9 times out of 10, that employee, there's usually someone that says, he's just like my family. And I swear, if I had $1 for every time I hear that, and unfortunately, it can create a lot of havoc if you're not careful. So let's talk about how to maintain your competitiveness. Sorry. Maintaining your competitiveness, especially as a self-managed association or any association, making sure that you are fair to your employees so that you can retain your employees. You're competing, if you're self-managed, you're competing with the management companies and you're competing with all the other associations around you. So let's talk about some of the ways that you can compare and come up with your manager salaries. Again, as I mentioned at the beginning, just because it's your budget doesn't mean that it's the right pay for the position. If you're consistently finding yourself with a manager who is not performing at the level that you need them to perform, you need to look at what the level is and the job requirements for the position that you're asking and see if you're just not compensating correctly and not getting the right candidates. If you're too low on your salary, then the higher quality managers who are going to be paid higher aren't going to apply, and you won't ever see their resumes. Or maybe you'll get their resume, you see their salary number and you get scared away by it. But the reality of it is if that's the level of service that you're expecting or that your residents are expecting, then that's the price that it's going to cost to pay. And lowballing that salary is only going to do yourself more frustration and your association more harm. The market has changed in the last 3 to 4 years. When I first got started here, starting CAMs coming into the industry, were a good 10% or more lower in salary expectations than what they are now. With all of the inflationary increases and the demands following Surfside for more, project management and the SIRS inspections and things like that the manager is having to work on, the salary rates have gone up, the starting salaries. And if you've only been giving your manager a 3% or 2% pay increase every year, you haven't kept up with market, which means that your manager is going to be more likely to be interested in looking at other positions when they see other positions that are being advertised regularly at a higher salary rate. So make sure that you do your research. I know Jeff just finished responding in the chat. We had a question about pay rates, and CAI offers a salary survey, and they have a wonderful database that shows all the information with for how you can compensate for the different designations, different years of experience, different types of associations. A simpler, easier 124 unit community like Jeff's is going to be much easier than a 3-tower multi-tiered condominium association with a $50 million budget. So those are certainly all things that you need to compare and look at apples to apples before you decide what your salary is. But the main thing is, don't just set the salary based on prior questions or prior year's budgets. Focus on doing your research to find out what the fair pay is for the position that you're offering, and then go that way, looking towards those the experience and the designations that are needing that you're needing. Yeah, we're having a problem, I think, with seeing questions and responses.
Leslie and Jeff, what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn on the Q&A. This way the chat can get kind of chaotic to manage without going insane. So I'm going to enable the Q&A, which is much more organized, and you and Jeff Rembaum can look at that and follow along that way much more easily.
Okay.
So do that.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay,
Yeah,
folks,
that's why I was getting.
the Q&A is now enabled, folks. So type your questions into the Q&A. Remember, this is not, none of this is to be considered as legal advice or anything like that. It is strictly informational and educational. So keep that in mind, and try not to keep any questions you have too specific to your association, because we do not know your documents nor have them in front of us. So please
And
use the Q&A.
contracts we don't have as well, so
Right.
Absolutely.
it has to be generic in nature.
Okay, back to y'all.
Okay, so the hourly employees, the minimum wage as of officially in January of 2024 here in Florida is $12 an hour. In September, it rises to 13. But if anyone was to try to live on $12 or $13 an hour, you would be in below poverty. The living wage in Palm Beach County for a single adult with 0 dependents is $18.12. So I always, as a former management executive, and even as a manager now with a team, I always try to use the Palm Beach living wage as my minimum base salary for hourly rates. So if you have a housekeeper and they're still making $14 an hour, you've got a problem, because they can go somewhere else, like a management company or another property, and get paid $18.50 an hour. If you've got a maintenance tech that's still making $15 an hour, you've got the same problem. And proportionately to that, if you're paying for an assistant property manager $20 an hour, that person's invested $1,000 almost to get their CAM license. You can see the proportionate there. They're barely making more money than a housekeeper. So proportionately, that you have to take that also into consideration when you're looking at how hourly rates.
Hey,
Jeff,
Leslie.
did you have something you want to
I
add?
sure do. I sure do. We have a couple of great questions pertinent to where we are right now. What was the website if our listeners want to go to, I think Florida Community Association Journal posts the average manager salaries and things like that. Where else? Or is that the website you directed them to?
No, that was one. And then also CAIonline.org has a salary survey that they have available.
CAIonline.org. I'm just saying that slowly for Carol. CAIonline.org. All right. Or you can go to the Florida Community Association Journal website, and you can also find it there. Starting salary for a CAM was another interesting question. And I think that they really depends on so many factors. That's nothing we can address here. How many units, how many hours, what are their responsibilities, what's the size of the budget? I mean, we can go on and on. Is it a portfolio? Is it a dedicated individual? How many, et cetera? So really, there's no great way to answer that one.
The only thing, Jeff, that I want to add to that particular question is I think that if you happen to be a new CAM looking for a position and wanting to know what your starting salary should be, recognize that you may need to step back and start as an assistant manager to start for a little bit, at least get a year under your belt. Most management companies won't hire you and put you on a property unless you've gotten a little experience under your belt. But and then that obviously can impact what your starting salary as a CAM can be, because you'll actually have some on-site real life experience as well. So
excellent points. We had a question again about providing a release. Can the association require owners to provide a release? This goes back to our little last subject, so that the employee wants to do off-duty work. So the owners then have to sign a release, releasing the association. And the question is, can the association require owners to sign a release? Can you require it? I doubt you can require it. You can always ask, but those types of releases really aren't going to hold a whole lot of weight anyway. So they may not be worth the paper they're written on at the end of the day. Probably better than nothing, but I don't think that's the answer to the conundrum of the off-duty employee doing work at the association. Somehow, some way, the association will still have liability.
let's get moving, because I looked at the clock and we're running a little bit behind here.
I'll be quiet. You go.
Well, this is important. Bonus and holiday gifts. This is a big deal. We just got past the holidays, and there's a couple of ways that employees get their bonuses. Holiday gift funds, cash gifts, cash bonuses, bonuses paid outside the typical payroll process where a 1099 is required, or annual performance-based bonuses. And this was one of the slides that Nicole was really going to hop on, because you can get yourself as an association or or you as a manager in a lot of trouble by running the money through the association's balance sheet. Those bank accounts that you create for holiday funds and all of those, once that money goes through there, it creates a auditing issue that had Nicole been here, she would be able to comment on a little bit more. But that was definitely a highlight of this particular issue here. Was those funds are used often and are not encouraged. It is best to do it as a budgeted line item where you've budgeted for bonuses and it's just paid throughout the assessment, as opposed to collecting and running the money through the association. Or you let a resident gather the money and the resident hand it out, but it not be run through the association. Okay, time off best practices. So this has changed a lot in the last couple of years as well. Many associations are still stuck in the, you're a new employee, you get 1 week vacation, maybe 1 week of sick time or something, maybe 2 weeks if you're lucky, and 6 holidays. That is not competitive. If that is what you are offering your employees, I can tell you that most of the management companies and other industries out there, especially in the hospitality industry through COVID, all had to adjust this severely because of hiring issues that we encountered. So you should look at increasing your holidays. And you should be looking for a minimum of 2 weeks starting vacation plus sick time. Usually now they have been combined into one bank of time called PTO, personal time off. So it's sick and vacation time. And you should definitely review that and then have, if you do have long-term employees, 5 years, 10 years, look at staggering those that time off over a period of time over those layers. Okay. Work from home. This is another problem. A lot of our board members do not believe that managers can work from home. And I'm going to be the first to tell you that, yes, we do need to be boots on the ground for a lot of different reasons, but there are things that we can do from home effectively and actually more effectively than we can in the office. By working on the budget at home, by working on writing requests for proposals or doing bid analyses or other reports, it helps us to remain distraction-free and helps us to be able to get things done a little quicker. And it benefits the employee by providing a little flexibility for parents and others that helps to build rapport with the client. So if an employee feels trusted and empowered by their board, they're going to be so much more likely to stay and work hard for you in other times and for longer periods of time. Educational and personal development. This is another thing that I think the times are changing, Jeff. I think that boards previously just did not seem to value education for managers. They think that they got their license and they can take, that's their problem. And they don't, I hear all the time when we invite them to educational events, to lunch and learns and things of that nature, they can't get away from the property. Their board won't let them get away from the property. The board won't let them, they don't seem to understand and value the reason for networking and the reason for the education. And that can be a double-edged sword. If your managers don't stay educated, then they get in a bubble of only what they know in your association. And that means they're not bringing best practices and current laws back to you timely to keep you out of trouble and to keep you heading in the right direction. Networking is huge. The ability to meet, and especially if you're out on an island at a site by yourself, the ability to meet other managers and industry professionals and have them on speed dial to be able to ask quick questions and get their feedback is huge. It helps to support you. You get the backing of all of those people that they've built relationships with when they're away. So we really want the boards to support their teams to get educated and stay educated. Time away to go for an education should be paid time off as a best practice. It shouldn't, because they're not really off, they're learning for your benefit. It shouldn't be that they are required to use their vacation time. And I have seen so many managers out there that have to use their vacation time to go to an event, a trade show, and that's just not fair to those managers when they're here doing they're there for their job. Also, I think the boards need to set the right example. They need to attend training.
Hey, Leslie, I know I said I'd be quiet, but I can't help myself. So
That's okay.
proposed legislation for 2024 is that if your community has less than 100 units in it, you're going to have, as a board member, 4 hours of continuing education. If you have more than that many homes, I think it was the 100 home mark, you're going to have 8 hours of continuing education per year. That's in the proposed 2024 HOA legislation floating around Tallahassee right now. Nobody is safe in the state of Florida when our Florida legislature is meeting, and we have about 50 some odd days left for them to make our lives better or worse. But on this Wednesday at noon, I'm doing another presentation that'll only be about the prospective legislation. So make sure you all come and dial into that one as well. It'll be condo, HOA, everything that is pending in Tallahassee right now.
That's awesome. Great. Free education and networking, they can get free, but you also have paid education. CAI, all the designations I have classes that you pay for to be able to do that. Excel, PowerPoint classes. If your manager is a great manager, but they just don't know Excel or they don't know PowerPoint, and you need them to beef that up, you can budget for that training and development in your budget. You can create a line item for that and give them that opportunity and support them. And that will be huge in showing your support of your manager, because it's not done by everybody locally lately. Why can't I keep a manager? So let's talk about work environment. Why can't I keep a manager? I told you my story already. I saw that in one of our questions at the beginning, before the event, we actually had a preliminary question, Jeff, that was asking that same question, wanting us to talk about manager turnover. So some of the issues that we see, and I know, Jeff, you get a lot, you and I have worked on a couple of HR issues with some boards before. The micromanaging board, the board that's in the manager's office every single day for an hour or two, if not longer. The abusive residents that are just screaming, yelling, cursing, calling names out, posting on Facebook, next door, abusing the manager, just attacking them personally, you name it. The board politics, the stabbing in the back, pulling the manager between the two, trying to get the manager to do this behind this person's back, and all of that drama. The lack of support in general, just expecting the manager to just go out there and do what the manager does and not really providing them any support or backup, throwing them under the bus at board meetings, not, showing up at board meetings unprepared, just so many different things there. And then the compensation and benefits being insufficient for the workload. That part-time manager that we were talking about earlier, but you're really expecting full-time deliverables, that type of expectation, and how horrible that can. These are the common complaints from managers that I hear from. Fostering a positive work environment. Some quick tips here are: avoid unscheduled visits to the management office that can hijack the manager's day. Create and approve one point of contact for direction from the board, usually the president. Respect the chain of command to the team. Avoid bypassing the manager. In other words, don't go to the front desk person and give them instructions that are contrary to the manager. Don't go to the maintenance supervisor and tell them to do something that is different than what your manager told them to do. Support the manager publicly to residents. It's the same thing, right? You support, we have the board meeting, we make the sausage at the board meeting, we may not all agree, but when we walk out, we all should be preaching the same message because that's what the board agreed to.
Your mouth to God's ears on that one. Getting the board to all put up a unified front.
Yes.
Nice.
And then respect the manager's time away from the office. I can't tell you how many times I've seen managers over my career get abused at night, 4 a.m. text messages because you're wide awake and you're thinking of something. So why not fire off a text message? Well, guess what? We're on call. So our phone ringer is on all night long. So we have to hear that message, wake us up, wake our spouse up, and then we can't go back to sleep. Expecting things on weekends and meetings on weekends and such. So making sure that you respect your manager's time away from the office. How can you partner with the manager? Timely read all the emails, reports, and presentations that they provide. Take the time to get educated on your role. First of all, let me back up to the first one. Nothing's more frustrating than sending a report and then a week or two later, somebody say, I haven't heard back from you about this, that, or the other. And you're like, it was in the report last week and they just didn't read it. So make sure that you're reading, because it takes a lot of time to put those things together and, show the respect in reading it, but stay for yourself. It's going to inform you in what you need to know. Ask questions in sincerity and not as a gotcha moment. There is nothing more frustrating than when you come to a board meeting and you've sent a package and all the bids and everything to the board a week in advance, and they come up to you in the middle of and you've asked for questions in advance, and they come up to you in the meeting and they have this gotcha, you didn't catch this kind of thing. That attitude is not fostering a positive working relationship between the board and the manager. I'm sorry. That is doing nothing but setting the tone of board versus management. And if you're the actual employer, especially, and this is a self-managed association, then you don't want that. You're all one team. You're all on the same team. Even if you're a management company, and you have a management company with a manager on site, you still want to be one team. It is not board versus management. It is board and management. And so stop playing the gotcha moment. And if you catch a mistake, we're all human, you catch something, just go in sincerity and bring it to the manager's attention, let them know, let them correct it, let them, own their mistake and move on. Come to the board meeting prepared to run a productive business meeting. So again, reading the package in advance, making sure that you're prepared to make timely decisions is all super important to help partner with the manager. Now, we've had a couple of questions about managing the manager. Yes, performance evaluations, if you are self-managed, the board definitely needs to set up a performance evaluation process. You need to set clear expectations and goals for the upcoming year so that you can then follow up the following year. And if you're doing a performance-based bonus plan, one of the options that I had mentioned before, you can tie this back to that. If you're with a management company, likely your management company has already a performance management plan and schedule, and they probably already do their reviews. A lot of the companies like to do the reviews in like October, November, so that they can tie the review to proposed pay increases in the budget, because we know how your budgets usually run January to December. So they're in charge of that, but make sure that you get involved with the management team to express any concerns or any opportunities for helping to let that manager shine, giving examples to the management company so that they're able to truly give a good review to the employee, both the positive and the negative.
Leslie, who's doing the review? One of our attendees is asking if your employee is assigned through the management company, who's actually doing the review?
The management company.
Can the board sit with the management company during the review?
Not usually, since they're the management company's employee.
Okay.
So most management companies would not allow that.
Okay.
But you can give feedback in advance. So when I was leading a team of managers, I would go to my boards and say to my boards, I'll be working on, Jeff's review next week. If you have any comments, feedback, successes, or failures that you'd like me to address, this is your opportunity to provide them to me, and then I provide them. And I include them in my review. If they aren't coming to you and telling you that they're doing that and offering you the opportunity for feedback, then I would highly suggest that you get with your point of contact and ask when the review is being done so that you're able to offer that feedback and tell them that you want to provide that feedback, both positive and negative. Again, if you're doing it yourself, though, the importance is to be honest. A review is not, if you're rating 1 to 5 and 5 is best, we're not trying to get all 5s here. We're truly, we're trying to be honest so that the person can improve and we can all have reasonable expectations for the next year. Make sure that the review is done annually and properly documented, and establish in that review what next year's goals are. So if you are self-managed and you're doing the manager's review, generally the president and maybe one other director will sit and do this review. And you can have a template that you set up and create and add the comments and the goals for the following year and what your agreed upon deadlines are. If there's going to be any education that you're recommending for them, all of that can be explained so they can plan and schedule.
Richard, the proposed bill you asked about is House Bill 1243. Answering this one live because I hit the wrong button. I tried to type the answer and I did it wrong. So, Richard, this is for you. House Bill 1243 is what you're looking for. Just do a Google search.
Okay, so with that being said, we're coming up on our last few minutes here. We ran through the end a little bit quicker. Jeff, did you have any final comments before we really open it up for any more questions?
I'm just glad everybody is here. Have reasonable expectations of your manager. They are not the police. They are not a referee. They really aren't your best friend. They're not your enemy. They have a job to do. I just got a clean roof notice from my association. I'm on the board for 10 years now. It's going on 10 years. You think I'd know better,
Aren't
but
you
here I
term
am.
limited?
I wish, right? I wish they would. Please, legislature, help me. But you got to treat your board members. The manager needs to treat the board members like any other member. We would be really upset with our manager if she didn't give violation notices to fellow board members. Garbage cans, driveways, roofs, whatever the issue may be. So you really have to work with your manager and respect them and not get angry or upset if, in fact, you're on the other side of an issue from time to time. It's business, folks. It's just business. So you have to approach it that way.
Absolutely. Okay, few questions here.
Hey, you got someone that wants to help you, wants you to help them find a job.
Find a camp. Absolutely. Yes, I do help some people do that. So feel free to reach out for that. I do.
Outstanding. Good. Find me a legal assistant secretary, please.
Yes, I'm working on it. We already talked about who's responsible for providing performance review to a maintenance man who is the association's employee. Does the management company supervise him or the volunteer board? Well, so based on that question, the way she's phrased it, it sounds like it is a bona fide association's employee.
Agree.
And not a management company's employee. And in that case, it would be the board.
Yep.
Because the board is the one who cuts his paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
What Absolutely. Will be a good way to trace or prove that a manager is doing side jobs while on the clock and or favors for cash or kickback?
I have to go backwards. Wait, your manager is doing side jobs. Usually it's like the maintenance person who's doing side jobs.
Right.
Leslie, if you were hired as a manager, can we then have you come over and change the light bulbs? I don't think so. Usually it's somebody else, not the manager.
Well, camera systems, things like that. I would be interested to know if it's a management company employee that you suspect is doing this versus a direct employee, because I think that would probably provide some limits, depending on which one that is. It probably have some legal limitations on how you could address it.
Yep. The other part of this question is interesting as well. Kickbacks. How do you prove kickbacks? Probably one of the hardest items out there. The legislation for 2024 does include new punishments, for lack of a better word, for any board member and manager that puts their hand in the till, so to speak, and receives something of value from a vendor doing business with the association without consideration back to that vendor. So we will have increased penalty for that. But getting to the initial question, how do you prove it? Not easy is the only way I can say it. Sometimes events simply are so unreasonable, they don't pass the smell test. But short of that, it is a difficult situation for sure.
Yeah, it is
What, did we just
difficult.
lose everybody? What just happened? My screen oh, you turned off the PowerPoint, or somebody did.
Yeah, since we're in the questions, I just made it so people can see your faces.
Perfect. Awesome.
Very
Thank
nice.
you.
Thank you, Jeff.
So, let me see. We got, do you have a simple manager performance review form to share? I have some, yes. So if you reach out to me, I am happy to share with you. Pitfalls of going from management company to in-house management.
Ooh, I like going the other way personally. I like going from when they go private to the management company versus retracting from the management company to individual. It's a whole nother world. You give up so much. You have a big management company. I'm just going to name a few, right? From Associate to Castle to Campbell to First Service and so many wonderful other companies. They have great resources for the manager and continual training programs. And then you lose that back office support, I suppose, in when you go individual. What about bookkeeping and accounting that's being handled by the management company? Your day-to-day manager doesn't handle the accounting and the bookkeeping. The management company does. So now who's going to handle that? So
yeah, there's very few managers. I mean, there's a few out there, but there's very few managers that are capable of handling all of that stuff on their own. And so the resources that are lost is really big. And so that's definitely a pitfall of going from a management company to an in-house management, keeping up with your tax reporting and all of that. You know, I mean, yes, you can hire a bookkeeping service to do some of that stuff, but, you know, ultimately they do what managers tell them to do. The HR management, managing performance, a second set of eyes coming in there to supervise and see what they're doing, and just have somebody else, if you have a problem with the manager getting ill and having a backup to come and cover, all of those things can all be a negative if you were to go in-house. What if the manager does the payroll only through a third-party company? I think this is talking about the maintenance man. Does the management company supervise? I'm not sure what that.
Well, let's keep going though. We're actually over time, so I do want to thank everybody.
We are sending the presentation via email, and info non-compete clauses with association hired managers. That's a whole nother class. Non-competes are a whole other class for sure.
You need to, if you have individual questions on non-competes, you need to seek the legal advice of an employment lawyer.
Absolutely. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate you, and both Jeffs actually. Jeff Solomons as well for helping me manage. I appreciate it, and appreciate everyone else joining us today. Hope everyone has a great day. We are sending the presentation.